My name is Henry. People call me Grandpa now, but long ago I was just a shy young man with a crooked smile and glasses that kept sliding down my nose. That's when I met her, Margaret. She had the brightest laugh I'd ever heard, a laugh that made you forget the weight of the world. And from that day I knew I would love her all my life. I still remember the day we met. It was at the church picnic in the summer of 1954. The air smelled of roasted corn and fresh-cut grass. Children ran barefoot, and the band played an old tune on the radio. I was standing by myself, awkward in my jacket, trying not to look lost. And then she walked by. Margaret wore a simple blue dress, nothing fancy. But when the wind caught it and the sun lit her hair, it felt like the world itself paused. I didn't even have the courage to say hello at first. She came to me. She smiled, offered me a glass of lemonade, and said, "You look like you could use a friend." That single sentence, it was the start of everything. Our love wasn't a whirlwind. It was steady, like a river that never stops flowing. We married young, built a small home with our own hands, and filled it with laughter. It wasn't always easy. Money was tight, work was hard, but every evening when I came home and saw her waiting at the door, I knew I had everything I ever needed. I can see it still. The small wooden house, the creaky porch, the smell of bread baking in the oven, Margaret humming in the kitchen while I fixed the old radio in the living room. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch together, her head resting on my shoulder, watching the sun go down. We didn't need words, just the comfort of knowing we belonged to each other. Life was simple, but it was ours. She gave me children, a family, a reason to wake up each morning and keep going. And every wrinkle that came with the years was like a new chapter written in our story. After more than 50 years together, I thought we would go on forever. But forever is a word life doesn't always keep. Margaret grew sick. At first, it was just a cough, a tiredness she couldn't shake. Then came the hospital visits, the worried faces of doctors, the quiet prayers at night. I sat by her bedside holding her hand, watching her grow smaller each day. She tried to smile, tried to comfort me, though she was the one in pain. One night, she whispered, "Don't cry for me, Henry. Promise me you'll remember me in the good days, the laughter, the songs, the love." And then, one morning, she was gone. The room was too quiet, the bed too empty. The world, without her, felt colorless. After she passed, the house felt like a hollow shell. The laughter was gone, the songs were gone, and all that remained was silence. I still set the table for two out of habit. I still turned to tell her stories, forgetting she wasn't there. Grief isn't loud, it's quiet. It waits for you in the empty spaces of the day. Every corner of our home held her presence. The blue dress she kept folded in the wardrobe, the old teacup with a crack down the side, her handwriting in the recipe book. I kept them all, unable to let go. Some nights, I sat on the porch alone, listening to the crickets rocking gently in her chair. And in the stillness, I would talk to her, not out loud, but in my heart. I'd say, "I miss you, Margaret. I miss you every day." Now, as an old man, I understand something. Love doesn't end with death. Love is carried in the stories we tell, the memories we keep, the lives touched by the one we lost. Margaret may be gone, but she lives in me, in our children, in our grandchildren. Every time I see their smiles, I see her. I sit in my chair, glasses slipping low, and I look at the photographs on the wall. our wedding day, the first baby in her arms, summers by the lake, winters by the fire, a whole life captured in still frames. And when my grandchildren climb into my lap and ask, "Grandpa, tell us about Grandma," I do. I tell them about the girl in the blue dress who gave me lemonade and changed my life. I tell them about the love that carried me through decades. And I tell them that when you love someone truly, that love never dies. They tell you grief fades with time, that the sharpness softens, that the wound closes. But the truth is, grief doesn't vanish. It changes its shape. Some days it's a whisper, other days it's a storm. And even now, all these years later, I still see her everywhere. The first weeks after Margaret passed, the house felt like a stranger. Every sound seemed louder, every silence deeper. I'd walk into the kitchen expecting to hear her humming at the stove, only to find cold stillness. I'd sit at the table, my hand reaching across instinctively for hers, and touch nothing but empty air. There was her rocking chair by the window. For 50 years, that chair had moved with her, creaking in rhythm with her thoughts. After she was gone, I kept it in its place. I couldn't bear to move it. Some evenings, I'd sit across from it and talk as if she were still there, nodding quietly, her eyes on mine. People tried to comfort me. Neighbors brought food, my children called often, my grandchildren sent drawings and cards. I was grateful. But when the night came and the house grew quiet, I felt the truth pressing on my chest. I wasn't just alone. I was half of what I once was. Grief has a way of surprising you. Some mornings I'd wake up, the sunlight streaming through the curtains, and for a split second, I'd forget she was gone. I'd turn, reaching for her, only to find the bed empty. Those were the cruelest moments, the hope before the memory returned. Yet, in that pain, there was something else, a reminder of just how deeply we had loved, for you can only feel such loss if you've been given such a gift. I realized that grief was not the absence of love, but its echo. It was proof that she had been real, that she had mattered, that she still mattered, so I kept talking to her. At the breakfast table, in the garden where she planted her roses, on the porch, when the sun went down. Maybe no one else could hear me, but I believe she did. And in those quiet conversations, I found strength to go on. When Margaret passed, I thought my life had ended too. But the strange thing about grief is that it doesn't only bring endings, it also forces you to find beginnings. Not because you want to, but because you have to. At first, I resisted everything. Friends invited me to gatherings. Neighbors asked me to join them for Sunday service. My children urged me to travel. I always said no. I wanted to stay in the house, in the quiet, surrounded by her things. It felt like leaving meant betraying her. But one morning, my granddaughter, only 8 years old at the time, climbed onto my lap. She looked at me with those wide, honest eyes children have and asked, "Grandpa, why don't you smile anymore?" That question broke something inside me, because I realized I wasn't just living with my grief. I was letting it spill into the lives of those I loved. Margaret would never have wanted that. She had always been light in the darkest room, laughter in the heaviest silence. If I truly wanted to honor her, I had to carry her light forward, not bury it in shadows. So I started small. I went back to the garden where her roses still grew. At first, I didn't know what I was doing. I never had her patience with flowers. But as I worked the soil, watered the roots, I felt closer to her. Each bloom was like her voice, whispering, "I'm still here." Then came the porch evenings with my neighbors. We'd drink tea, share stories, laugh at the small absurdities of life. And though I still felt the empty space beside me, I learned to fill it not with silence, but with gratitude. Gratitude that I had known such love at all. Slowly, I found life again. Not the same life, never the same, but a life where her memory wasn't a weight holding me down, but a wind pushing me forward. Now, when my grandchildren play in the yard and call out, "Grandpa, come join us," I do. I laugh with them, I chase them, though my knees protest. Because I know that in my laughter, Margaret lives on. And I know that when my time comes and I see her again, I want her to look at me and say, "Henry, you carried me well." Now, as I sit here with silver hair and glasses that never seem to stay in place, I realize something. The story of Margaret and me isn't just about love. It's about what love leaves behind, about how it shapes us, teaches us, and carries us even when the people we love are gone. Sometimes my grandchildren climb onto the porch, restless and curious. They ask me, "Grandpa, what was Grandma like?" And every time I smile, because how do you capture a whole life in a few words? I tell them she had a laugh that could fill a room, a patience that could calm storms, and a kindness that made every stranger feel like family. I tell them she was the reason I believed in joy, even when the world gave me none. But I also tell them this: life is not measured in the years we live, but in the love we give. Margaret gave me 60 years of laughter, comfort, and devotion. And though death took her from me, love made sure she never truly left. Grief taught me something too. At first, I thought it was my enemy, a thief that stole my peace, my sleep, my smile. But grief was also the teacher. It showed me the depth of my love, the strength of my heart, and the truth that the pain of loss is simply love that has nowhere to go. So I send it forward. Into the hugs I give my children, into the stories I share with my grandchildren, into every rose I plant in her garden. And when the wind rustles through the trees at night, I like to think it's her reminding me, I'm still here, I always will be. If there's one lesson I want them to remember, it's this: love doesn't die. It changes form. It becomes memory, legacy, and light. And if you are lucky enough to find someone who gives you that kind of love, hold on to it with everything you are. Because one day, when you're old and thin like me, with your glasses slipping down your nose, that love will be the treasure that warms you even in the coldest nights. The seasons don't stop for grief. The sun rises, the snow falls, and the world moves forward even when your heart stays behind. That first winter without Margaret was the hardest of my life. I remember the snow piling against the windows, the cold creeping in through the walls of our old house. Every year before, she would knit scarves and fuss at me for not wearing mine. She'd light the fire, brew tea, and we'd sit together in the living room, wrapped in warmth that was more than just blankets. But that winter, the chair beside me stayed empty. The nights were endless. The ticking of the clock echoed in the silence, each sound reminding me of what was missing. I tried reading, but the words blurred through my glasses. I tried listening to music, but every song seemed to carry her voice. Even cooking was impossible. I burned a stew more times than I cared to admit, because my mind wandered to her recipes, her careful hand stirring with patience I never had. But grief is strange. In the depth of that winter, I began to notice things. her handwriting on old recipe cards, a half-finished scarf folded neatly in a basket, the scent of lavender still clinging faintly to her pillow. It felt as if she had left pieces of herself behind, little reminders that love doesn't vanish with a heartbeat. So I kept them. I wore the scarf she never finished. I cooked from her recipe cards, even if the meals were lopsided. And I sat by the fire, whispering the stories we once shared aloud, believing somehow she still listened. That winter was not the end of me. It was the beginning of learning to live with her absence. Over 60 years together leaves behind more than memories. It leaves behind letters, piles of them written in faded ink, folded neatly in envelopes, each one carrying her voice across the years. After she was gone, those letters became my lifeline. Margaret had always been a writer. She wrote to me when I was away for work, when I traveled, even when we were under the same roof, just for the joy of it. Notes slipped into my lunchbox, folded letters left on the nightstand, postcards from places she dreamed of visiting. I saved them all. At the time, I didn't know why. Now I do. Some evenings, I take the old box from the closet and spread them across the table. Her handwriting dances on the page, delicate, looping, filled with the same warmth as her voice. I read them slowly, tracing each letter with my finger, hearing her in every word. One note said, "Henry, don't forget the milk today, and don't forget that I love you." Another, from years later, "The roses are blooming. Come sit with me and let's watch them together." Such simple words, but they carry the weight of a lifetime. Reading them brings both pain and comfort. Pain, because she is gone. Comfort, because she still speaks to me through the ink. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I read them aloud, just to hear her name in the air again. Love leaves behind echoes. For some, it's photographs. For me, it's the letters. And in those letters, she is still alive. They say memory fades with age, but love keeps certain things sharp forever. For me, it's the stories. Every time my grandchildren visit, they climb onto the porch, restless and eager, and ask, "Grandpa, tell us about Grandma." And so I do. At first, it hurt to speak her name out loud. I thought if I spoke, my voice would break. But children have a way of asking with such innocence, you cannot refuse them. So I began with little things. How Margaret used to bake pies every Sunday, how she always hummed the same tune while she worked in the kitchen, how she laughed so hard once she dropped flour all over the floor. The children giggled, eyes wide, picturing the woman they never truly knew. And as I watched their faces, I realized that in telling her story, I was giving them a piece of her. She wasn't just a photograph on the wall. She was alive in their laughter, in their imagination. Over time, the stories grew longer. I told them about the church picnic where we first met, about the little house we built, about the roses she planted that still bloom every spring. Sometimes my voice cracked and I'd pause to steady myself, but the children never looked away. They listened with the kind of attention only children have, pure and unbroken. And one evening, my youngest granddaughter looked at me and said, "Grandpa, I wish I had known her." I held her close and whispered, "You do, sweetheart. You know her through me. And as long as we tell her stories, she'll always be here." Now, I am old. My hair is white, my steps are slower, and my glasses slip more often than they used to. But even as the years take their toll, one thing remains untouched: the love I carry for Margaret. It has become less of a memory and more of a compass, a quiet guide in everything I do. Sometimes, late at night, I sit by the window and look at the stars. I imagine she's out there somewhere in the quiet places beyond my sight, smiling down the way she used to when I fumbled my words. I don't know what waits after this life. None of us do. But I like to believe love is too strong to end with death. I think about what our love has left behind: children, grandchildren, even great-grandchildren, a garden that still blooms each spring, letters that still smell faintly of her perfume, photographs that capture not just faces, but whole chapters of our story, and me, an old man who still speaks her name with gratitude instead of despair. That is what love leaves behind. Not just grief, not just longing, but a legacy, a reminder that we were here, that we mattered, that we gave something to the world beyond ourselves. And when my time comes, when I finally lay down my glasses and this old jacket, I know I'll see her again. She'll be standing there in that blue dress, a glass of lemonade in her hand, smiling like she did that summer day in 1954. And I'll walk to her, not as an old man, but as the boy who first fell in love. Until then, I carry her in every breath, every laugh, every story, because love, real love, never dies.